Hello and welcome to the Vaults of Terra. My name is Ed and today we're going to be continuing with our Space Marines chapters videos with a look at the Iron Hands. Now, the Iron Hands are one of the first founding legions of the Space Marines that later became a chapter, and their legion number was Legion 10. They also became known as the Iron Tenth. Now, their Primarch was Ferrus Manus, literally the Iron Hand. And the Iron Hands are notable for their heavy use of bionics and their reverence for all things mechanical, and thus also have close ties to the Adeptus Mechanicus. Now, the homeworld is Medusa, interesting name, and they do not have one precise fortress monastery. Instead, they have 10 mobile fortresses in which each clan from their chapter operates from, which I will explain in greater detail later on. Now, of course, their battle cry is "The flesh is weak." Now, the Iron Hands don't feature too heavily in the Great Crusade, from what we know. So very little is known precisely about what they did, although they did become known for having slow-moving, massed firepower assaults, thus crushing the enemy underfoot as opposed to the lightning-fast raids that were favoured by their brother legions. Now, their Primarch, Ferrus Manus, also known as the Gorgon, was discovered early by the Emperor during the Great Crusade. Now, his hands were made of living metal, something that apparently happened to him when fighting the Great Silver One known as Asarnoth, although this story is more grounded in folklore than having actual fact attributed to it. Now, Ferrus never actually united Medusa, unlike many of his brother Primarchs. Instead, he preferred to have them not at war with one another, but at least competing with one another, on the grounds that competition bred strength. When the Emperor finally arrived on Medusa, Ferrus challenged the Emperor to fight him for dominance, and the fight subsequently levelled a mountain range, apparently due to the ferocity of their conflict. However, Ferrus was eventually defeated and swore an oath to obey the Emperor. He was then put in charge of the Iron Hands and led them to many victories against the Emperor's enemies. Now, it was also in this period that the Iron Hands forged a bond with the Mechanicus due to their prolific use of bionics and the fact that Ferrus had a great interest in the intricacies of the machine. It was also because the Mechanicus favoured brutal head-on fights much like the Iron Hands. Now, when the heresy first occurred, Fulgrim, Primarch of the Emperor's children and one of Ferrus's closest brothers, tried to turn him to the forces of chaos, and then attacked when Ferrus refused to be turned, although Fulgrim eventually could not bring himself to kill his brother and instead left. Ferrus, enraged by the betrayal, then went to Istvan V with the attack force to try and subdue the traitorous brothers. However, he was killed during the Dropsite massacre. His death came at the hands of Fulgrim himself, and his death also sealed Fulgrim's downfall into possession and chaos. Now, rumours have persisted that Ferrus's corpse was actually taken back to Mars because they wanted to examine his body, more specifically his Iron Hands. However, the Iron Hands chapter deny any such claims. Now, after the heresy, the remaining members of the Iron Hands were split up into smaller chapters. Now, the known descendants of the Iron Hands from this time were the Red Talons and the Brazen Claws, although it's unknown whether or not they followed the similar practices of the Iron Hands of equipping bionics so prolifically. Now, moving on to a little bit about their homeworld, the world Medusa is actually located near the Eye of Terror, although not close enough to suffer from its corrupting effects. Now, the landscape is generally harsh and unstable, with massive tectonic shifts occurring on a regular basis. Now, Medusa itself, much like the time of Ferrus, is not united by any single government, but is instead populated by disparate clans of miners living on great tracked vehicles travelling in caravans. Now, there are only two notable locations on Medusa if you were ever to visit, of course. One is a volcano known as Karashai, which is the location of the arrival of Ferrus Manus. And there is also the Land of Shadows. Now, the Land of Shadows is populated only by ghostly relics of an age past, and said to be haunted by the spirits of Medusans now long dead. Those who go there only do so in order to become supplicants for the Iron Hands recruitment process. But it's also thought that that was where Ferrus actually fought the Great One. Now, there are some rumours that this location is actually the site of some sort of Necron infestation, although the exact nature of this area is unknown. So if there's ever any more lore given about this area, we will know more. However, the living metal that was said to coat Ferrus's hands is a clue that Necrons may actually be present on Medusa. And moving on to the beliefs of the Iron Hands, they have a reputation for being relatively straightforward and incredibly harsh, and tend to despise those who they perceive as weak, going as far as to execute thousands for cowardice in the face of the enemy. Now, they are also on poor terms with the Raven Guard, possibly because of the Istvan V drop site massacre, although it's not clear exactly why they dislike the Raven Guard because of this, possibly because they escaped with their Primarch and the Iron Hands did not. Now, the Iron Hands also make extensive use of bionics where possible, with rumours that upon induction a hand is actually removed from the initiate and replaced with a bionic one. Their obsession with bionics is said to be because of their quest to make themselves stronger, as they see a weakness having formed leading to Ferris's death. There are also rumours that some brothers are wholly mechanical, although this is highly speculative and very few are said to have seen any like that. Now, the Iron Hands actually consider the greatest honour they can receive is to be interred in dreadnought armour, unlike many other chapters who see this as an extension of their duty rather than an honour. Now, Iron Hand chaplains are actually different from other chaplains in other Codex chapters, and that is because they are known as Iron Fathers. They are specially trained tech marines who serve to protect the faith of their brethren, and it's also a sign of the close links between the Iron Hands and the Mechanicus, although many do see it as a bit of an obsession rather than a link. Now, there are no notable gene seed flaws within the Iron Hands, although some say their obsession with bionicle replacement and seeking to drive out weakness is an actual flaw, although none can actually prove that this flaw exists, and many in the Inquisition have actually avoided looking at the Iron Hands in favour of looking at some of the more dubious chapters and their gene seeds. Now, the organisation of the Iron Hands is similar to any other Codex chapter, in fact it's virtually identical, however there are some distinct differences. Now, the chapter actually consists of 10 clan companies rather than just companies, which are each composed in a fashion comparable to that of a Codex battle company. Now, each clan company is actually an independent entity responsible for its own recruitment, and as such there are no dedicated scout or veteran companies in the Iron Hands. Instead, each company has their own squads, which are equivalent of this rank. Each clan also possesses a colossal mobile fortress, which is where they are based from on Medusa, hence why they don't have one fortress monastery. Now, the clans usually compete with one another for prestige, following their Primarch's mantra that competition breeds strength. Now, the hierarchy of the Iron Hands is quite different from other chapters. Now, the chapter is actually overseen by a chapter council and lacks a formal chapter master. However, Carvan Stronos is recognised as the first among peers on this council due to his reputation, and so serves as a de facto leader of the Iron Hands when a leader is required. Now, just to note, this is a correction of some of the contradictions that have occurred previously in the Iron Hands lore, where they were said to have a chapter master and also have a grand council. Now, this of course is now rectified with this hierarchy. The clan council, also known as the Iron Council, is made up of elected representatives from each clan, chosen for their dedication to the clan. Now, these are also known as Iron Fathers, much like their chaplains, and of course the chaplains actually do have a place on the Iron Council as representatives of the spirituality of the chapter as a whole. Now, due to the reverence for the machine amongst most Iron Hands, the council members are often venerable dreadnoughts. Now, finally today I wanted to talk about the recruitment. Now, the recruitment in the Iron Hands is conducted by each clan company, and they choose their recruits from the nomadic clans of Medusa only. Now, they will only take those with great physical and mental strength. Any with perceived signs of weakness will be eliminated instantly, even if their weakness is to be more compassionate than the others. So that is everything I wanted to say on the Iron Hands. Now, this is quite a brief video, but unfortunately the Iron Hands do not have a huge amount of lore associated with them. Now, what will happen is that I will also cover them in the Horus Heresy series, so we will come back and cover anything you may think I will have missed. There is also some other sections that they will be caught up on later. So that is everything I wanted to do on this chapter today. As I've said previously, our next video will be the Imperial Guard, and we'll be starting off with a brief overview of the Imperial Guard for any of you out there who are a little bit hazy as to who these guys are and why they're different from the Space Marines. Now, if there's anything else you want to see on the channel from now on, do let me know. Also, do keep voting for chapters, as we will keep running these videos in order to just finish off the chapters in the Imperium. Now, that's everything I wanted to say today. See you next time on the Vaults of Terra.